So everybody, welcome to this video. I'm going to be talking about a couple things, couple of ideas. So let's get started with the first one. The first one is in relation to the notion of justice and law. Now, I was hearing this week this person talk about this, and they said that if there is no justice, there is no law. But I was like, how do you come about this? Are you saying that justice is a precondition to law? Like in this case, we can think about law as the judicial system, right? That regulates, imposes, and I can't really say prevents crime or wrongdoing, but it does punish, right? It does try to seek justice. And then the notion of justice is just like making things fair or equivalent, or like in a negotiation with a person when you're like, that's not fair, that's not just, right? So we can say that thanks to the notion of justice, yes, we're able to kind of sophisticate that notion of justice, and then we have law, right, which is the judicial system, or just any type of formal system where justice is applied, right? But then it's like the thing of the chicken and the egg, and in this video I'm going to be talking about some things like that, like which came first, the chicken or the egg? Which came first, law or justice? Now you could say, yeah, it does make sense that justice is a precondition to law, but then law is in charge of making sure justice is served. So then could it be the other way around? Could it be that thanks to law we have justice? That doesn't really make much sense, right? Like how is it possible to have a formal system that is able to apply justice, right? Or is able to seek justice or find justice? And I can think of maybe the idea where it's not so much a formal but rather an informal system, where like primitives or maybe people before the Romans and the Greeks, and before we had law as we know it today, took law into their you could say took law or took justice into their own hands. They would make things happen, but based on their own system, because law at the end of the day is a criteria, is a system, right, where we seek that abstract notion of justice. Right now what is justice? Because we can get confused with the terms vengeance, revenge, justice, right? Like revenge, I guess we could say, is more of like when you go and kill someone, right? If someone killed someone in your family, things like that. But it's still that notion of seeking what's fair based on your terms, right? But then again, what are your terms? What is something, could we say that everybody has different levels of justice? Like if someone steals from you, and then they catch the thief, right? Would you want to apply the same justice as another person? Like some people would just say, you know what, just give me back what you took and we'll leave it at that. And other people would say, no, I want what you took from me, and I want you to be fined, right? Or go to jail, or so it's like those types of different levels of justice, right, are within that system. And that system maybe came first, right? That notion that even if it was in informal ways, right, even if it were like, let's say it was in a way of like, you killed someone from my tribe, so now I kill someone from your tribe, so it's like that system could have been first, right? The system of law could have been first, and then it seeks justice, right? If it weren't for that lawful system, that innate lawful system that we humans have, then we maybe wouldn't even be able to seek justice. But what do you think? Which one came first, justice or law, and why? Let's go to the next one. So in this one, in this video, we're gonna be talking about justice, creativity, and real life, with some different types of subtopics in that third part. Okay, so we started kind of easy with with justice and law. Now, this week I was also watching someone give this presentation where they were talking about the 80s, right? And they were saying that the 80s were kind of a good time to be alive because of just like the fashion, the music, technology. And then when this person talked about technology, they gave some examples, especially with Pac-Man, right? They referred to Pac-Man and they said, yeah, for example, Pac-Man was, developed or invented in the 80s. And thanks to Pac-Man, we were able to further develop like other things. But also, we have people now that even in plain 2024 still love Pac-Man, right? Like 40 years after Pac-Man came out, there are people that still like Pac-Man. Like we can say Pac-Man is an invention, a human invention that has transcended time, right? I think after like maybe what, like 20 years, 10, 15, 20 years in something, like I think about Beyonce, where like there are these artists that have been around so much, and even if they don't drop albums or music or make movies, like you still know them, they're still popular, right? Pac-Man's kind of like that, like it has transcended. And at the same time, it's something so simple, no? Because I think about these games where like, like Mortal Kombat or Zelda, right? Where like the first type of games that we're developing. And with Pac-Man, for example, the controllers, you literally have only four options, right? You have up, down, left, right, and that's it. So I was like, whoever developed Pac-Man must have had like a very simplistic mind to do that, right? Because and let me be clear on this point. Making things simple is hard, right? And even like when you explain things, like in order for you to be able to explain things in an easy way, it's really hard, right? Typically, we people like use a lot of words, and we give long-winded answers because we don't really understand things. Like when we really understand them, we can just say them very briefly, concretely, right? Very simply, and people will understand them very easily. But that's hard to do, you know? And I thought about this and I was like, what other things could have been invented or developed that weren't? What other things nowadays can we invent and develop that aren't being developed or invented, right? Like all of that potential. Like, I don't know who invented Pac Man, I know nothing about it, but just think about those people. Whoever invented it, like, or developed Pac Man, were probably people that were like, yeah, let's do this. It's pretty simple, just a little yellow ball running around a maze like structure, being chased by ghosts. And then if like the little ball catches something, then it's able to go after the ghost and eat them, and up, down, left, right, and that's it. So simple, right? But so hard to do. And not only simple, but something that will just connect with people. Like I've played Pac-Man. You can play Pac-Man for free on the internet, right? Just go to Google Pac-Man game, boom, and you're there. You're able to go up, left, right, right, up, down, left, right. So and okay, now we're talking about the 80s. We're in 2020, in the 2020s now. 40 years later, we have all of these resources, right, for free practically, or you can pay to use some of them, the more premium versions, right? But we have YouTube, we have social media, we have cell phones, we have computers, tablets. We have so much, we have so many resources out there. Yet what's happening? How come people aren't like developing and exploding with different types of ideas and things? So I was thinking about this, and I was like, how much is it that society and the government or the system is weighing you down, and how much is it that you really aren't that creative? You really aren't as good as you say you are, and not because you can't or you don't try, but just because naturally we're limited, right? Like I think, like, just imagine the situation, this hypothetical. God comes down and he says, you know what, humans, you don't have to work anymore. I'm giving you all the money you need in the world. Everybody's rich. I'm also taking away hunger. Nobody has to eat ever. Like, all the comforts in the world, you can have them. And then I asked myself, what would we do in that situation as humans? Do you think we would be out there creating, developing, innovating? I don't think so. I think we would still be acting the same, being lazy, just, you know, doing passive activities like watching TV, watching YouTube, um, or sleeping or doing nothing, right? Like, imagine that. Like, everybody's always talking about how they don't have enough time in the day to pursue their activities and things. But I say, if you really were given the opportunity to pursue your activities, I bet you still wouldn't do them, right? But that's just my idea. So yeah, I was thinking about this. I was like, being creative is hard. Being creatively simple is hard. Innovating easily and effortlessly is difficult and complex, right? It's complex to have those epiphany moments where you're operating more with the right hemisphere, right? Like, they talk a lot about whenever you talk about serendipity or epiphanies, this idea comes to mind, which is the idea of uh, the apple from the tree falling on top of Isaac Newton's head, right? And then him just having that breakthrough moment of, gravity, right? But they also talk about all of the left hemisphere executive function, logical thinking, data analysis, data collection, experimenting, scientific experimenting that was going on before that right hemisphere spontaneous understanding, right? Like, obviously, not just any person under a tree, if they had an apple fall on their head, would have had that breakthrough, right? Like, you need to feed your mind with all of these ideas, right? From everywhere, constantly learn, constantly study. And then one day you'll probably be relaxing, doing something apparently uh, meaningless. And that's, because they say those are alpha waves in your brain. No, when you're most relaxed is when you can actually, like, have those breakthroughs where the information comes in, and you create, you invent, you realize certain things, right? But that's complex, right? It's obviously, like, how did Isaac Newton come to realize, or how did he come to discover the notion of gravity, right? It was obviously after a lot of studying, a lot of reading and learning on his part. So yeah, it's that quality of looking for untapped potential at every corner, at every step of the way. This means that, like, I was reading this book. It's called something like, it's by Joe Dispenza. It's called How to Stop Being Yourself, right? And the way I visualize it, well, the way he expresses it, I imagine it like this. Like, how they say time is linear, right? Well, that's just an idea, but the future is in front of you, the past is behind you. So I think about it like, you walking through like an open wall, and like this open wall has like a bunch of holes, right? And each hole, like maybe an infinite amount of holes, and each hole is like a tunnel into a dimension, right? Into a reality. And each one of those holes represents like different decisions, different situations, right? Like, it's just like, think about this, like, in this next second I can do this, or in this next second I can do this, right? Or I can think about this, or I can go over here, or I can go over there, right? And it's like, how do you know where the best decision is, right? How do you know where the most juicy part of reality is, right? That untapped potential. Like, how many things as humanity or as civilization have we left untapped? Have we not discovered? Have we not developed? Like Pac-Man. What if the person that developed Pac-Man wouldn't have developed Pac-Man, right? I would say we would pretty much be the same, right? With some maybe minor adjustments in like technology or video gaming, but um, yeah, I mean like there was something there, and obviously because after 40 years it's still popular, it's still known, it's a household name. But how many other things in the 80s, nowadays, in the 90s, before all those years, did we have like the potential to tap, and we just didn't tap, right? So it's like that's just if I die one day and I'm able to like talk to God, and be like, that would probably something that would be probably something I would ask him, like, what other things are there out there could we have done that we didn't do, right? As humanity, as like inventors and developers, right? um, so yeah, I was also reading about this topic, this hermeticism topic, which talks about the all, right, or everything. And it says that everything is not what we know. It's not like the universe and everything in it. Like it's another notion. And right now I'm at the part where it's talking about the correspondence principle, which is one of the principles, one of the seven hermetic principles, and hermetic principles. And it talks about how, in order to understand, I'm still not really getting it, but I do get this part. It's saying that in order to understand, the highest point, we need to understand the lowest point. So if we're able to understand the lowest point, we're able to understand the highest point. Now, we talk about creation when we talk about the universe and this life that we live in, right? So it's like, how do you, um, like, I guess the thing is trying to understand what the creator is, right? What the all, what the everything is, right? What you're trying to understand it. And the way you understand it is by understanding humans, right? Because if the all is like the highest point, then we can probably say that humans are the lowest, point. And I wouldn't say like animals or atoms, or I think it doesn't say that, um, because in a way they don't really have a mind. And in a moment I'm going to get to the mind. You'll see why I'm talking about the mind. But they start by explaining that there are two general ways of creation, right? The first one is kind of like addition, subtraction, ordeal with the physical, material, tangible world, right? So in this case, it's like let me give you just like an example, like a chariot, right? Like you make a wheel, you put it together, and then you can pull it, right, with a horse. Basically, everything that exists physically has been created, has been developed, has been added or subtracted, right? When you create something in the physical world, right? When you combine things or subtract things, right? That's a type of creation, right? But it's a type of physical creation. That's the first type of creation. The second type of creation is copulating, right? Which is having sexual intercourse. And this is, I guess they call it multiplication, right? Because you're multiplying yourself as a human species, as a species, right? If you're an animal species, you multiply yourself. So you have two people, right? Female and male, and then you have like 3 kids or 5 kids or 10 kids or whatever, right? So you get 10 out of 2, right? You could say in a way that's adding, and multiplication is addition in essence. But yeah, multiplication is like that compound notion of like there's more than just one by one, right? Like in addition, like it's just gonna explode. And that's what the second notion of creation consists of. I don't know if, let me know if there are other examples similar to this. There probably are, like chemical examples of creation, right? Where you, like an atomic bomb or things like that, where you get like a massive amount from a little amount, right? And that's also creation. That's done by us humans, right? You can say it's still like in the physical, tangible world, um, but there's a third one, and this is actually the correct way to think about like the creator or the all, which is the mind. So the mind creates, right? Like when we imagine like unicorns, ligers, right? Dragons, right? But it also develops like abstract ideas, abstract notions, right? So the idea is that the all or the everything is really this mind, and like we're in the mind of the creator, and this person has just thought us up, right? And by thinking, and in the book, this book is the Kybalion. It talks about how you can create, a universe, a world, like in your mind, right? Like you sit there, like George R. Martin, who created, the world of Game of Thrones, like, literally like these kingdoms and these problems between all these families, among all these families, right? That was all in his head. Or like J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter, right? Like you create this world in your head, right? Then obviously you write about it, and then it gets taken to screen, right? To series, to movies. But in essence, it is mental, right? You have to imagine it. You have to use your imagination and come up with this. So I just thought I'd talk about those type of creative situations, right? In this case, I mean, there are probably more, but those are two that I wanted to mention. Three that I wanted to mention, right? Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to discuss is the real life thing. So I watched this documentary called Surviving P. Diddy, and I was just like, wow, like I didn't know all that happened, like, in regards to P. Diddy, to Puff Daddy. No, P. Diddy or Puff Daddy? Yeah, Puff Daddy, Puff Diddy. I don't know if it's the same person. Yeah, but you get what I'm saying. He's the one that started Bad Boy Records and worked with Biggie, right? Notorious B.I.G. I guess he worked with Usher. He worked with Craig Mack, this rapper that I hadn't even heard of him, and I'm into hip hop, so I'm gonna be listening to his music, and just a lot of things like, related, like, I'm going to be talking specifically about the Tupac and Biggie murders. And I remember that, maybe like what, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, there was a lot of speculation about what happened to Tupac and Biggie, right? It was like, was it a conspiracy? Did he fake his death? What happened to Tupac? What happened to Biggie? And there was just a lot of mystery surrounding that. Now, if you watch this documentary and you know more or less about what happened to Tupac, which I think after some time, now, like, I think that murder has been solved by the FBI or something like that. I know that there were some people involved. I think like some cops had something to do with Biggie's murder, something like that. Um, but if you watch the Surviving Diddy documentary on the channel, the YouTube channel is called Swamp Stories. That guy makes really interesting videos with a lot of information, and he really goes in depth into the evidence and what happened. He explains basically it's speculation. There's really no evidence, but based on what the reports have said, and people's personal accounts on the matter, there was like a lot going on with P. Diddy and Biggie Smalls and Death Row and Bad Boys, and the Bloods and the Crips, and like there were a lot of people involved, right? So when Tupac ends up getting shot in Las Vegas in September 1996, there were a lot of factors at play. There were a lot of people involved, right? Like just watch the documentary or watch that part and you'll know what I'm talking about. And that got me thinking that real life is not straightforward. Real life is complex. What happened to Tupac and Biggie was real, was real life, was complex, right? And let me kind of explain myself a little better. When you watch a movie or a series, right? Like let's say you're watching Game of Thrones season 1 and someone gets murdered, right? You know why that person got murdered, right? Like it's pretty straightforward. It's like, oh yeah, it was this guy, and he had a motive. He was either crazy, like Joffrey in Game of Thrones, or he did it because it was revenge for the time that they did this to him, right? Like it's pretty clear cut. It's very direct, right? It's this happens because of this reason, and that's it. But that's fantasy. That's not real life. Real life is complex, multi-layered, multifactorial. Like there are a lot of different factors at play, and they all just kind of intersect in one moment, right? That it's really hard to pinpoint. So, even now, like you talk about Tupac or Biggie, and like I can't explain really what happened. You have an idea, like an abstract notion, but you can't really say like, oh, this person killed him because of this, right? Because that's not how real life works. Real life is complex, right? And that's how movies work, and series and stories, fiction stories. That's how they work, because they'll tell you like, oh yeah, this guy had this motive and he killed this guy for that, and that's it, right? So when people, I think, were trying to find out what happened to Tupac and Biggie, um, I think even if people came out and said it, you know, I think people wouldn't understand it. Even now, people don't understand it because people expect to hear, and I think it's a very simplistic way of thinking, right? It's kind of messed up because you'll leave out a lot of things, and it will make you jump to conclusions and judge people hastily, right? You will judge people impulsively, right? Like if there's a news about someone doing something and you're just impulsively like, oh, what a piece of trash, that person's bad, whatever, when you don't even know the whole story, right? Because you don't bother with the whole story. I think with the Tupac and Biggie murders, people wanted to know something like what they know in movies, right? Like who did it and why, right? And it's like, bro, this is complex. There's like a lot of things here at play. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of motives. There's a lot of everything, right? It's complex. It's real life, right? It's like in movies, like and I'll repeat it again. You get these people that are like, one, two, three characters. You know them. This happens, and you get it, right? In real life, it's like there are more people. There are more things, right? So, I think I just wanted to kind of mention that. Um, and I made this video that was called a fraud and a fake, where I talk about myself and when I make these videos, and I was thinking about it, and I'm like, because I think it's very easy to judge people, and to kind of say simplistically, like that guy's pretentious, that guy is talking as if he knows what he's saying, right? So I kind of wanted to do this exercise where I would tell myself like, you're a liar, you lie about everything you say on here. You really don't have any evidence to back up anything that you're saying, right? Or any claim that you're making, like that I'm making. I don't have any evidence to back up anything that I'm saying, right? I lie. I'm a liar. Right? And I think this is because I kind of want to simply question things, right? Now, I understand that some people may know, right? Or they'll probably think it's stupid for me to question things because it's like, well, you should know those things, or that's just common sense, or, you're stupid for even asking those questions. And it's like, you may be right, but I don't know. Or I have known, but I forgot. I don't know. I'm a bad student of life. So, in this case, my idea, and when I ask questions, when I talk about topics, I think I talk about them with an inquisitive attitude, right? Like with a questioning, curious attitude. Like I don't think I'll ever get dogmatic on anything. Well, on almost nothing. But yeah, like for me to say like, no, this is the way this is, and there's no other way to look at it. I don't think I do that in general. So what I really want to do is learn and know things, right? Um, okay, and finally, after that dumb exercise, I'm doing this new format where I'm writing down on my computer, like I did with the I'll do it on Monday section, the ideas I'm going to talk about, and then I'll talk about them because before I used to write them down on this piece of paper, but now I'm writing them down like on a Word document, like when I first started making these type of videos. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, kind of to close this video, was this idea that I was reading about in a book called Math for Life, which basically talks about how you use math in your everyday life. And right now, I'm at a chapter, excuse me, I'm at the chapter of taxes. So the person's talking, the author's talking about taxes. And it's like taxes, ugh, boring. Like, I don't want to know about taxes, right? But it's actually pretty interesting. And I'm going to talk about the most interesting aspect I just found out about taxes, which is this notion between poor and rich people and goods and services. So this person, I think it's like one of those things that, and this is where I get like most of my inspiration and ideas. I'll see something and I'll take from that something what I think is like the most interesting aspect, or like the idea I get based on what this person said, right? So it's not exactly the idea, it's kind of like I'll put a twist to the idea. But this person was saying that, for example, there are different types of taxes, right? Like income taxes, sales taxes, property taxes, and then there are like different types of taxes in relation to like who gets affected by it, like flat, progressive, and regressive taxes, right? Like flat taxes are the taxes that everybody has to pay the same amount, but then there are other taxes that you have to pay more for or less for depending on if you make more, or if you're buying things. Like there's this notion, this guy was saying that if you, for example, uh, are poor, you actually pay more in sales taxes because poor people buy more goods than rich people, right? So if you know anything about that notion of economy, you know that there are like services and goods, right? When you buy something, when you pay for something, you're either paying for the good or for the service, right? You buy a burger, right? Or you buy a TV, and then you get internet, right? So you buy the good, the TV, and then you hire the service, or you pay for the service, the internet, right? And it just blew my mind. It got me thinking about all these types of different situations. Like, again, what came first, the goods or the services, right? Which I think is the goods. I think the goods is a more primitive thing, right? Like I have something, and I have something is different than I can do something for you, right? I have something is the good, and I'll sell it to you for money. And I can do something for you is the service, right? And I can provide that service in exchange for money, right? Which I feel like it is maybe a more sophisticated transaction, the service. So then I was like, okay. Is there a correlation here between all of this? Like, for instance, poor people will buy more things but pay less for services, while rich people will pay more for services while paying less for goods, right? In other words, poor people can't really afford the luxury of services because I guess maybe it's more of a luxury, right? Or maybe it's more expensive, or maybe, because think about a service. Like a service is like what? Like someone coming to your house to clean your house, right? Or maybe so like if you have kids, like hiring a private tutor to teach them how to play piano or how to play the guitar, right? Or teaching you how to how to do karate or yoga, right? Like, yeah, services I think do have more of a fancy, you know, notion, and I hadn't thought about that. I'm like, that's pretty interesting. And goods is like, just to appear fancy. Like, I'm just gonna buy myself like a nice suit or a nice hat or some nice shoes. I'm gonna buy myself like a big flat screen TV so I can watch whatever on it, and those are just goods. So you can see like poor people maybe buying more goods than services, and then rich people actually spending their money not on goods, so much, because you could say, well, yeah, they do have goods, they do have comforts, they'll buy themselves like a palace and like everything they need, but that's it. I don't think they spend money every weekend. Well, maybe the kids of the rich do, right? They'll go out shopping and like just pay, or I don't really know how rich people work. I think that's kind of like, I think I was talking about that in one video once, about like how rich people, well, like what is the personality of rich people, right? Like, are they organized or disorganized? I think they're disorganized, and I think they pay people services to organize their life for them, right? They'll probably like hire someone that can manage, like a bunch of secretaries that can manage their time, and like all this stuff. So I think it does kind of make sense in a way that rich people will hire services, will pay for services more than they will pay for goods, or that they will purchase goods, right? Because even like the financial services, right? That's if you're very wealthy and you're paying like investors to invest for you or whatever, those are all services. And I think it's more, and we can even get into this notion, like I just thought about it right now, where rich people, maybe they are rich because they're better at being social, right? I mean, you do have poor people like that have like extended families and friends, like the whole neighborhood comes to the block party or whatever. But I think whenever anybody from the outside wants to get in, everybody's like hostile, like, who's that, right? Because it's only the people we know, the people that are familiar to us. While rich people, I think, may have this notion of just, yeah, and rich people will have this notion of like, I can make deals with you even though I don't really know you, but like, let's work together and make some money, right? Which I think would kind of make sense, and that will allow your social circle to kind of like expand and extend. And I think that's what ultimately, like kind of like trust in the United States, that's what basically allows money to actually flow. Because what creates wealth, I think, ultimately, in theory, they say, is the flow of money, right? It's like, dead money don't make no money. If your money's just sitting there, even if you have a lot of it, you're not gonna have it for long, right? You need to have that money circulating and moving around, right? Such as in like businesses, investing, etc. So yeah, what do you think about this? And what was first, right? Was it goods or was it services? I think the thing that was first were goods, because goods are kind of like more physical, more tangible, right? You have the good and I can sell you the good. And services, I think even services require trust, right? Like, if you hire someone, you got to kind of wait to see if you can trust them, right? You hire a teacher who is supposedly a good teacher, and they're going to teach you kung fu or taekwondo, and what if they're not that good, right? So services do need a certain level of trust, right? Which I think is also kind of interesting. And in relation to the tax thing, I think the tax thing would apply to the notion of services, maybe because services tend to be private. I mean, I know even if you are like self-employed, you still have to pay taxes. But there's just a whole ordeal with taxes. Like, you could also not pay. Like, let's say you have your stable job, right? You are a teacher at a professional karate school, but then you also give private classes, right? So you will pay for your what's it called? You will pay your taxes with your job, right? When they take away taxes from your paycheck from your formal job. But then if you have a side gig, such as teaching the kids or teaching this wealthy family karate, uh, you will probably not report or pay taxes on the money that you get from your private classes, right? And again, that's a service, right? A good is a good. And even the notion of is a service has infinite potential, right? If you know how to do something, you can do it over and over and over and over again and just keep getting paid infinitely, right? Like if you know how to, let's say you know how to fix cell phones, right? Or you know how to do plumbing, or you know how to what's it called, which I think this was actually the essence of, in the old days, a trade, right, that was taught from generation to generation, right? Like I know how to make shoes, my father before me, his father before him, etc. And it's like the potential for infinite money, right? Which is ultimately the essence of capital, of the head, right? Capital is not money, but the potential to make money, right? Like, how can I get more out of this? How can I flip it? How can I compound it, multiply it, right? So a service is something that you can repeat again and again, right? I know how to teach. I know how to teach you karate. I taught 10 people karate. I'm on my 11th person, then I'll go to my 12th person, and a good is very limited, because a good is just, I sold this TB, this book, this these clothes like one time, and that's it, right? Then you have to buy more. And I mean, it does have that repetitive quality. Goods could be repeated, but I think a service at least doesn't need the physical, the tangible, right? Like even that is kind of like overbearing sometimes. Just having to carry around things, right, to sell. And if you know something, if you provide a service, you only need your head, right? Which is kind of like the thing of everything is mental. Sorry about the noise. Someone is like building something. But yeah, let me know what you thought about all of these ideas. And, nice recording this video. I'm glad I got to explain these notions. I think I'm gonna be doing stuff like this where I just like write down random ideas and put it on the title, what this video is about, and just chat about it, talk about it. And Sundays, I think I am gonna be making a tarot card reading session where I'm gonna be reading 3 cards. You choose the number 1, 2, or 3, and I'll explain what happened in the past at the beginning of the video, and what I think will happen in the future in relation to the past week and the future week, right? So 1 week behind, 1 week ahead, and the same thing with the future, right? 3 cards, pick a number. I'll explain the card's meaning, and I think that'll be good because it's something that I think I've been wanting to do, and it should be fun. So let me know what you think about all this, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, peace.